I thought all my auditions were gonna be like the Jim Henson one. Never again was anything like that, where you just get to go in and talk to the director and you're sitting in this big office. No. Usually you're out with 100 other people who look exactly like you, and everyone's like this.
Hey, it's Michael Sheridan with the New York Daily News. You may recognize this face. That's because I used to do a bunch of videos every week on this very YouTube channel. Welcome to Daily News Weekly, where we bring you the stories from the past week that you may have missed. Well, I'm back for a very rare appearance to talk about this interview that I did with Star Trek The Next Generation actress Gates McFadden. It was an absolute joy. I have gotten a chance in the past year to speak to a couple of Star Trek actors, including William Shatner.
You're a with it guy, and yet the technology of bringing you closer to a person, it makes you say Chihuahua.
And Brent Spiner, which was a phone interview, so I don't have a clip to cut to at this point. But there's a link to the article in the description down below. Anyway, enough about them. I'm here to talk about Gates McFadden. It was absolutely terrific talking to her. I don't want to ramble on too much. I just want to get to the interview, but it was so much fun. I hope you enjoy it. There is an article that I wrote about this interview down in the link below if you want to click on that. She was talking about her podcast, Investigates, where she talks to different Star Trek actors, but the idea will be that she'll be talking to other Star Trek actors who weren't on The Next Generation. Anyway, get to the interview. Please enjoy it, and if you do, hit that like button down below, and I thank you for watching.
Start video. Got it. All right.
There we go.
Yay!
Hello, nice seeing you.
Nice to see you.
You're doing all the production work for this podcast? Is that...
I'm not doing all of it. I'm doing, someone asked me, Nacelle asked me to produce it. They said they would produce it and asked me to do it. I wanted to do the editing myself because I'm very particular. And they have a fantastic group of sound editors. In fact, there's Thomas Cassetta is one fellow I work with on the podcast. So what I do is I do all the editing, and then basically, because I don't have the high-end machinery that he has, okay? We do a team viewer thing that I send it, finally, the edited version to him, and if he has questions about something or I didn't correct it right, he asks me. We go over that, and then otherwise he makes it sound better, is what he does. He adds whatever they add, and suddenly it just works better. If I knew I would be I would be a DJ or a record producer, but I can't tell you. All I know is that I spend hours going, okay, I want to edit that, and it takes forever. And Brian Volk-Weiss from Nacelle, he's the CEO. I mean, he was extraordinary. I don't think I've ever in my life had a CEO like that. He goes, well, I'd love to hear you guys dissect episodes. I said, no way. First of all, I'm not interested. People do it much better than me. I've heard some of these people, in their pajamas, eating a sandwich, dissecting Remember Me. And they are smarter than me on it, I learned something when I listened to them. Seriously. So anyway, I said, that's not going to happen. He said, well, then just talk to him. I said, well, what am I going to talk about? It was this whole thing. And actually, it was a process of fighting with myself. And finally, I went, hey, you know what? This might fail. This might be really dumb, or it might be really fun and great. So just have the courage to do it. And that's kind of where I went finally.
Well, it's funny because I didn't realize that at first when I'd seen, when I got in the email about this. But Brian, I actually interviewed him two or 3 years ago. Maybe it was 4 years ago when he first started The Toys That Made Us. And it turns out he grew up in Forest Hills, Queens, which is where I grew up. Went to the same school I went to, and he was
oh no, oh no
so
way!
It was like a weird, what the heck? It was such an odd experience to have that connection.
But that's the kind of connection that's so cool. That is the connections I think many people today are making with each other. There used to be something that kept a much greater distance. There is hopefully something happening where we all realize we are all from the same tribe, really. And we should just kind of embrace that fact and go, okay, you go different directions, but we are all There are all these connections that we have with people that are so wonderful,
You know,
and they're
and,
it's
and that,
rich.
and it's one I actually really enjoyed about the two
Mm.
episodes of the podcast that I listened to. I mean, I've been a Star Trek fan all my life, but I don't read interviews with the cast member. I don't really know much about the personal lives of any of these people or you or anybody. Because I like the show. I
Right,
never had
of
much interest
course.
in the rest of it. It's like you guys are having a conversation. It's kind of like if I'd ever really hung out with a celebrity, I'd rather just sort of sit and have a beer with them. And that's the kind of connection I'd rather have than a selfie or whatever, an autograph, and that kind of stuff.
Well, that's exactly right. It's what makes people, when you have extraordinary conversations on a plane, happen. And then also when someone's invasive sitting next to you and wants to grill you about like a series, then it's not the same thing. Then it's seeing you as a product in some way, or you are um whereas when it's two people, human beings are just can be so amazingly connected if we just stop defending ourselves so hard, stop sort of trying to pretend we're something that we aren't, that we're any better than anyone else, which clearly we aren't. If you have more money, that doesn't mean you're better. It just means you have an easier time of it. Um, yeah, it's interesting. I was just this morning looking over something that I found by chance on the YouTube that was of my great mentor, my teacher, Jacques Lecoq. And they sort of had this thing that showed him all through his life. He's speaking, he was lecturing, there were some demonstrations. And he said, I think of myself as an explorer. And it just hit me so hard. I just sort of burst into tears. It was like, yes, that is the way I feel about life. And the minute I don't think of it that way, the minute I think of like, I've got to conquer this, or I've got to make money on this, or I've got to do this, it's not the same thing. And it screws it up. Whereas if I just am an explorer who's not trying to conquer, who's just trying to learn and is curious and examines something and sees what it feels like to learn and participate, but doesn't dominate or control. And I really feel that that's sort of a space that I want to keep. I want to turn in that direction more and more and more in my life.
Was there anything like these? You've known these people, a lot of people you talk to are people you've known for so long. Did you learn? Was anything surprising about what kind of came out of the conversations that you didn't know
Yes,
about these
every
people?
single person, there was something that I didn't know. And for some people, a lot. I don't want to pick particular ones, but now Will Wheaton's was 2 hours and a half of recording. And I mean, to me, it was a fantastic conversation. I learned so much about him, and he learned so much more than he ever wanted to know about me. It was something about the friendship with these people really did. We've always been close, but we just became even closer during this time. And I feel it's like a gift from the universe that somebody came to me and said, would you do a podcast and do at least some of it with your friends from Star Trek?
I think that's one of the joyous parts when I feel like I'm name dropping, but when I talked to Brent Spiner before, I asked him about like, well, how is it you guys have actually maintained this relationship for 40 years at this point, which I think is largely unheard of. It's rare in Star Trek. It seems like none of the casts, at least excluding, I don't know about the newer shows, but all the previous shows didn't all have that kind of connection that you guys seem to have. And I think on TV shows in general, I don't know that, except for maybe Friends, I don't know of any story that's come out of that where the cast of people were so close to one another in real life like you guys are. It seems like a rare thing.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there was Seinfeld. I don't know, but would imagine that, first of all, I do want to say that, a lot of the people in Deep Space Nine, not everybody maybe, but a lot of them do still see each other as friends. So there's a handful, I think, in that show, maybe a handful, maybe a smaller handful in Voyager. They did brilliant casting because it worked. And even though there have been periods like when we were all raising our kids, not all the ones of us who had kids, and you'd get immersed in the family life. Or when my parents both died within a year of each other, I was like totally, taking planes to Ohio all the time and all of that sort of thing. But we always would come back together at certain points. To me, there was something magnificent that happened at the 25th anniversary. We hadn't all been together as a group for quite a while. We would talk to each other all the time, different ones of us, but we didn't really on a regular basis get in touch, like we do now. Like, I've already talked to a couple of the people already this morning, right? So it's it was something about realizing it was 25 years, and when we first started, we never dreamed we would be doing, Star Trek would still be part of our lives. We looked at the original cast and we're like, "Yeah, well, that's not gonna be us. That's them," and of course, there we are. That hubris was knocked right down. I didn't understand the impact of Star Trek. I don't think any of us did, except perhaps LeVar and Will Wheaton. I don't think the rest of us did. Whoopi probably did too, but because I had never watched the original show. Now I have, and it's fabulous. I've watched all the different shows. I haven't watched complete series, but that's a lot of stories that make you think. And that's quite a gift to give to a group of people sitting in front of the TV, to think about the future, to think about it in a way that you don't lose hope, to think about inclusion, diversity, different ways of holding contradictions, that it doesn't have to be good and bad. There can be to say it's okay to hold contradictions in your hand and to be ambivalent, but just at least look at the problem and look at the issues and think about it. I, I I'm in awe of the power of the show, and I wasn't for years. It's through the fans that I've learned about, oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. I never thought about it that way, and I've really learned myself.
And I was curious because I hadn't realized it, but you hadn't really done conventions until the last few years. Before that, you weren't.
I
How
was
did
the
that?
last I was the last one in our cast to do it. No, I had done some before this last few years, but I really started to embrace it after the 25th anniversary because I guess maybe I had just evolved in my life and realized how important role models were, and I was less afraid. In the beginning, the first convention I did was there had been a big outpouring of love from fans when I was let go after the first season, and I got asked back. And when I was asked back, I did a convention, and it was very moving. I all this love coming towards you of a certain kind of love, and I I was I was a little uptight by the whole thing because I had been stalked at one point in my life, earlier on in my life, and it was a couple years, and it was long before there were stalking laws, and it really was a terrifying experience, which I didn't even talk about. So I think I was very scared in any crowd of people that that person might be there. So I wasn't as comfortable, and I kept a guard up, and I don't think it served me well. I think when I'm myself, it's I feel better. I think people feel more at ease with me, and I've learned how to just be able to be who I am more.
Not often you get let go from a television show and then get a chance to go back. Do you ever consider like what would have happened if that didn't happen? Like if season one had been
Oh,
your only Star Trek, and then what
oh,
would have?
many times, but you see, I don't think that I think I was doing fine. I had a movie and plays, and I was doing fine. I was very stunned that I was let go, but I knew that actually I felt I was doing a good job on the show. I didn't feel I was just not doing a good job. And I felt there was chemistry with the cast, so I felt it had something to do with another whole situation that I didn't comprehend, which has to do with politics and writers and offending producers and not doing things the right way, all of which I was very unschooled in. I think I was fine. I don't think my life just would have been different. I would have done a lot more theater. I would have, I'm sure, moved back to New York. I still had my apartment there. So I think that's what would have happened, you know. Um, I was in a play in New York. I was doing all kinds of things. So yeah, no, I don't think I think in fact it took me several years to get back to the writers didn't sort of refine the character for several years. There were a couple episodes, but it was sort of how are we writing this character? And then finally, I think the last few seasons, it really became the character again, which I really loved.
I know there have been people who have kind of criticized Next Generation for its the women characters weren't treated the same as the male characters. I mean,
Oh,
do you think that's a
definitely.
fair
Oh,
statement? Or
absolutely, absolutely. It did get slightly better by the last few episodes, last few years on our show, but if you look back at the early seasons, primarily the women never had conversations with each other unless it was like about men or something very brief. There never were real intellectual discussions in the same way that there were between other male characters, and but that's what it was, and it was interesting. It was a journey to try to find the strength in Dr. Crusher, and that's what I put my mind to when I was doing the other episodes.
when I was a kid, Jim Henson was a hero of mine. So, I only just recently learned that I didn't even know that you had anything to do with Labyrinth and got a chance to work with him. So, tell me a little bit about him. Like, what was the experience of working with Jim Henson, and how did you end up? Like, what was that first meeting like at that point?
Well, the first meeting was when I mean, he had already seen me. He had been grooming me without my knowing it for a while. And he cast me in Muppets Take Manhattan. I just saw it from my agent as they'd like to have you go up for the secretary of Dabney Coleman. And I look at this like small scene and I'm like, oh, cool. This would be my first big movie. This is great. I love the Muppets. I went there and I'm shown right into his office. And meanwhile, I had been learning the script. I never ever was asked to read the script because he had already seen me do Cloud Nine in New York, a Tommy Tune production of the Carol Churchill play where I played a triple role, and a fantastic play and production. And that was when I got my equity card, actually. I was a replacement. I was not the original cast, but I was a replacement cast, and fantastic, life changing for me. But he had seen that, so he already knew that. He already knew for the guy who did the choreography for Dark Crystal. He already knew that I taught at the graduate school at New York Tisch, University. That I was teaching movement for the actor, clown, some commedia, things like that. He already knew that, and he knew that I worked with masks, which I did. So masks have a similar articulation to puppets. Everything you're learning what it means when you do this as opposed to this, as opposed to this. You learn how to articulate things. So it's very similar to puppetry, right? Even if you have a puppet and you're turning, there's something that happens. It's where is the focus? Where do you want the focus to be? So I never studied puppetry, but I did know how to coordinate movements. And so I enjoyed very much doing, I thought all my auditions were going to be like the Jim Henson one. Never again was anything like that, where you just get to go in and talk to the director and you're sitting in this big office. No. Usually you're out with 100 other people who look exactly like you, and everyone's like this. But at any rate, he had in his mind he wanted me to work with him then on Labyrinth. But it was a 2-year process. Again, I didn't really know about this till he explained it later. He flew me to to London, and introduced me to the workshop and said, "This is the movie Dream Child. I didn't get you union working papers, but we're going to give you special thanks on the film." So I was to choreograph all of the creature scenes in this Alice in Wonderland movie, and it's a really brilliant movie. It's got Jane Asher, Ian Holm. It's beautiful. Gavin Miller was the director. So what I would do is I would take, like, the Mad Hatter had 7 puppeteers working the jaw, um, the eyes would someone was doing that, someone was making the eyes go like this, someone was doing the cheeks, they had all this stuff. Now there would not this is we're way advanced now, but that was state of the art at the time. So they had these radio controlled things. So I would have the Mad Hatter, the March Hare, all these people who are in puppetry costumes. The Mad Hatter was a dwarf who was a brilliant painter, by the way. And he could see through the collar of the Mad Hatter. That's where his eye level was. But he had the Mad Hatter head was way above him and 7 people working the controls for that. So we had every tilt and every turn, had to be choreographed. And then he's in a tea party scene with all these other characters and a live actor. And then I had the British actors who were doing the voice for the characters. So, it was complex. And Jim took me there and then said, and this is the da-da-da-da-da, and here's the studio, and I have to go back to LA, but good luck. And and I was like, what? Seriously, I was just stunned, basically. And I just plunged in. It was like I don't know, it was like a battleground or something. Things would break all the time. And I think that was where he was testing, can she take the stress? Can she make the decisions? The day of the tea party, which was the biggest scene, the radio controls on the Mad Hatter broke. And we had to do this other whole, it was, if he wanted to know if I could take stress, he definitely found it out that day. It was just a nightmare. But we got through it, and the movie's beautiful, And I really thought after Dream Child, I thought, you know what? I think I like acting. And I was doing well in New York because I started it late. I had been teaching for so many years. I was teaching and directing at a lot of different places, mainly on the East Coast. Then I went back and started acting. That was mainly due to James Lapine and Des McAnuff, who kept saying, go back and do acting, for heaven's sakes. What are you doing? And so I had been cast in Hannah and Her Sisters. I had had my costume fittings for 5 scenes. It was like amazing. I had shot 2 days of a television thing that was going to last for 2 months. And there was some other play or something that was like right there happening or in the pipeline. And I had an accident skiing and I lost all of them. And I had a 2-month recovery and I got very depressed. And Jim Henson came back and said, will you do this? It would be almost a year in London. It ended up being like 9 months. And so I said, yes. It wasn't and the reason that the sweetener was, he said, you can play Jennifer Connelly's mother and you'll get papers and you'll be able to say that's another part in a big movie. And when we got there, after we got over there, Equity turned around and said, no, we will not give her papers. And so for the second time, I was denied. So someone else was cast as the mother. And then I did do all the other work. It was a Herculean effort for everyone involved. It was a lot of work in the show. And at the end, Frank Oz, who I love dearly, he said, do you want to do Little Shop of Horrors? I'd love to have you, do that. And I said, you know what? No, I think I'm going to go back and do acting. And I would say it was within a year, I was cast in Star Trek. I did a play. I did a couple things in New York. I came back and started acting again. And then Star Trek happened.
And then you originally turned down were you reluctant to do? Because I was curious, that seems to be a recurring theme.
Yes, it is. Okay, I cop to it. I have a psychological defect here, okay? I'm leery. It's true. I kind of go, okay, what's the catch? There's got to be a catch. If I take that piece of candy, someone's going to slap me. So I said no twice, and I went to do a play with Des McAnuff for like $400 a week, and really. But thankfully, I was asked for a third time, just like Brian came back and asked me again. But he kept coming back. He was so charming. he just went, "No, hi, it's me again. I really think you should do this." He's just great. Um, he was I don't know. I really I'm impressed with him. I don't know him well, but I really like the way he hooked me. Very, very good way to hook me, you know? Whereas Gene had always said, "Oh, you can have a jacuzzi. Here I am. You too can have a jacuzzi, having drinks out in the back." And that doesn't hook me as much. I mean, yes, of course, that's nice for one night, but that's not my life.
How much do you feel like your trajectory of your career has been your control, like your choices, as opposed to like things just kind of coming? Like Henson was something that you had no involvement in; it just happened to you. Arguably, maybe Star Trek could be said the same in a similar
It
fashion
it
because it's
it
the same
could
way.
totally it was totally the same way. It was my agent who was a humongous fan who said, "Please, please, if you do anything for me, will you please." I was in LA having been tested for a movie, and I was on my way to the airport, and she said, "Please, please, please go to Paramount. You could they're just beginning reading. You'd be like the first woman they see." And, exactly. And I walked in, I saw 3 parts. I said, "Which one do you want me to read for?" They said, "Oh, pick whatever part you want." And I picked what I thought was the comic character, which was Dr. Crusher, which was not the comic character. At any rate, it was the one funny scene, though, that I had in 7 years or whatever, how many years? 6 years. But I think that's true with the things that have actually been, like, big chunks of my life. I think that's what happened with teaching. It was my mentor who wouldn't accept jobs. Everyone asked him to teach, and he said, "No, why don't you hire her?" And that's the reason I got hired. Star Trek happened that way. I think, so many things did. But and even the one of the things that I really loved doing, which was building this theater, this multi-theater space in Atwater Village in Los Angeles and being artistic director. I loved that whole process. I loved reading new plays, finding new writers, new voices. I loved the things I directed while I was artistic director. I absolutely adored the projects. I'm very proud of the work I did. And they had a range, I directed Crack Whore Galore, which was a musical, and I directed, things that were very serious. But I think that there is a tie-in, and the tie-in is that I get into the work. I sometimes wish I was someone who had more of like, "I'm gonna be the best this, and I'm gonna take that path to get to that place." I don't think that's me. I think there are so many things that I'm interested in that maybe I'm an amalgamator more than an innovator. I just really I would love to be a songwriter. I still wanna do that. I would love to learn how to play electric bass. I still feel I wanna do that, and I feel those things could happen, you know? I think I've just taken journeys, like, I restored something in a village, a medieval village in France, this totally, not like something you see in the house, beautiful, like, this big estate, this it looked like just a pile of rubble, but I restored this house and did the electrical plan and the plumbing plan, and I was so fascinated by how the stones were used and how the masons would do it. I just I get interested in a lot of different things, and somehow there is a link between all of them. I'll let you know when I find out what the link is.
I think it's important to say, I think part of that is saying yes. You can have those opportunities come your way, but if you're always kind of running away from them, eventually either they stop coming or you just kind of miss
Right.
these opportunities.
Well, it's interesting you say that because the one time in my life where I really said yes was when I went to Lecoq's, because all of my other friends were going to New York to find an agent to become famous or become a good actor and known. And I did a 3-day workshop with him, and it was so transformative. I thought he was a genius, and I went, "I want to study with that man," and he offered me a scholarship, and I said, "Yes." And it was one of the loneliest and toughest periods of my life. I had to clean apartments, and it was really tough. I busked on the streets. I used to ride unicycle and tap dance trying to make some money to eat. But I have to say that was the one time I was absolutely certain that that's what I wanted to do, and it was one of the greatest decisions in my life.
My last question is the one that I have to ask because I
Okay.
have to ask it.
Yeah.
Are you going to be appearing on Star Trek Picard?
Not this season, that's for sure. I don't know what's gonna happen in the future, you know?
And
There
the
you
funny
go.
part is you're saying that, but there's a part of me going like, she could be lying.
I
Because she'd have to, in all fairness, she'd have to keep it secret.
Yeah, but who knows, you know? It would it would be very fun to do, no question about that. But I also understand it might not fit into the what the showrunners wanna do. So there you go.
And that's it. That was my conversation with Gates McFadden. Gosh, she was absolutely lovely. And I'm so grateful to her because we yammered on for a very long time, much longer than I was supposed to. And she didn't seem to complain. And I hope she enjoyed the conversation. I know I did. And I hope you enjoyed it too. And that's it. If you want to watch any other Star Trek related content on this YouTube channel, there's a couple of videos right there. And that's it for me. Scotty, beam me out.